Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the 2 Minute Drill podcast. We are doing a limitless edition, and we are going to be doing things a little bit differently. We're going to go a little bit more rapid fire because it is just a head to head today with Tyler Cordell and myself. Tyler, say what's up.
What's going on, guys?
Last time we did this, we did it a little bit differently. It was just Jake and I. Jake edged me out by 3 different bets. He was strong on the over-unders for once in this season, so he got me on that one. But Tyler, let's see how you and I do. We are also going to do something different since I didn't do the regular 2 minute drill. We're going to throw in the Thanksgiving games as well since there are
Okay.
3 of them. So we're going to start off. We're going to jump straight into it with the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. The over-under is 41.5. The Bears are favored by 2.5. And on this one, it looks like we're going to get, a weird combination of quarterbacks. Not necessarily an exciting game, but, it's the Lions. They always get the Thanksgiving game. Tyler, what are you thinking in this one particular?
I'm thinking I'm excited to be a David Montgomery owner. That's what this game comes down to. I picked up the Bears defense as well. I think the Bears are going to be able to go out and potentially just make David Blau look like a fool. I think Detroit is just they're a team that they've had glimpses this season, but they just haven't broken through. And I don't think that with a backup quarterback they're going to get it done. If Jared Goff was in the lineup and maybe they've been playing some close games, I could see it being a competitive game. But it's always interesting with Andy Dalton. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get the quick strikes downfield to Mooney. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. I actually think I would like the Bears better if Justin Fields is in the lineup, only because I think he'd be able to get it down on the ground against them. Personally, I see myself taking the Bears to cover, and I'm going to take the under, and it's only because I just don't know if Detroit puts up 2 touchdowns, and I just don't see the Chicago offense as one that runs the score up. I could see this game finishing like 24-10, but I'm interested to hear your take on it, Mike.
I'm honestly 100% on your side on that. I definitely am on the Bears side. I think that the public is actually coming in on the Lions, which generally means that they're wrong this year. When everyone is on the Lions don't show up. When no one's on the Lions, they keep it close.
Yeah.
So I'm fading the Lions in this one on Thanksgiving, even though they do tend to like have their one highlight game of the year
Yeah.
show up on Thanksgiving. I'm not counting on it on this one, and I actually really do like Andy Dalton in the lineup for the Bears. So I think it's a great play, of course, like you said, for David Montgomery, but also for Mooney, like you mentioned. No one else that I'm really excited about on the Bears and on the Lions. I mean, it's just kind of the same old with Swift and Hawkinson and really not touching anyone else.
Yep. Agreed.
Sweet. So let's go ahead and move on. Up next, we got the Raiders and the Cowboys game. The Cowboys are favored by 7.5. The over under there is 51.5. On this one, I definitely think that 7.5 is a little bit too much to be giving these Cowboys, especially considering that Amari Cooper won't be playing. It's a short week. CeeDee Lamb is leaning towards playing, but again, just not that full 100% recovery time. They do have these up and down weeks, and if we're playing that pattern, then this would be an upswing game for the Cowboys. But I think that the Raiders are really struggling ever since that Ruggs incident. I don't think that they've won a game since, but I do think that 7.5 is a little bit too much to be discount. That's just a whole touchdown
Yeah.
to be beating the Raiders. I'm not seeing it, so I am going to be on the Raiders side of that one. And the over under side, I'm going to be on the under there too. I don't see it as this big shootout game with that 51.5 over under. I'm leaning towards the under there. But Tyler, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is one of those interesting games where you're right. It depends what Cowboys team shows up, right? If you told me at the end of this game the final score was 38-10, I would absolutely believe you. But 7.5 is a lot. I reluctantly am going to take Dallas to cover it. I think on Thanksgiving we just tend to see Dallas come out and play some good football. I think that having CeeDee Lamb back is really the big caveat to whether or not that happens. Obviously, if CeeDee gets ruled out last second, I don't feel that way. But I think that if CeeDee's playing, I just don't know I don't know that the Raiders have enough weapons to keep up with him. I think that Diggs is playing good enough that when he's not playing against a superstar receiver, he's forcing turnovers. He's, keeping those guys in check. He is playing a little bit as a shadow corner, but he's just not quite there yet. He's still a rookie. We see him give up big plays and stuff like that. But if you've got him against, Waller or Hunter Renfro, I think he'll be able to keep that person in check enough that it's not, it's not playing against a Tyreek Hill or someone like that. So I'm going to take the Cowboys there. I will take the under. I agree with you. I think that it's just it's too high. I don't think it's going to be this crazy high flying matchup. I think Dallas will be able to establish the run enough to where when they get a decent lead, they can just keep running the ball. Zeke loves to perform on Thanksgiving. I still think about him jumping in the Salvation Army pot and all that stuff way back when. But yeah, I think it's going to be actually an entertaining game though. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that I just wanted to touch on here to get your opinion on is outside of Zeke, the other three running backs in this game, Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake, Tony Pollard, any of them seeing a starting lineup for you? Or in terms of fantasy, I'm really not hot on any of them.
I think that teams that have Josh Jacobs with the injuries that are going on in the NFL, unless you're in an 8-team league, I think you have no choice. You have to play Josh Jacobs. I think Josh Jacobs will get enough touches to where it'll be fine. I'm not in a huge rush to play any of the backup running backs. Obviously, if you're sitting on bye and you can always take a shot on Pollard, right? Pollard's always going to have a chance to score a touchdown. But yeah, I mean, if you have better options, I'd pivot. If you're looking for a flex, I would say Gallup over, someone like Pollard. But yeah, I think it's a sneaky play to maybe slide. I know God, it feels bad after last week with him blanking you, but I think you could get Bryan Edwards involved this week. I think that Trey Diggs is going to be able to take somebody away on that offense, and Bryan Edwards is going to be open. But it doesn't feel good, and you're not excited about it. But I think you could take the shot on it.
Yeah, absolutely. The other name that I'll just highlight here, because there are key players missing and potentially even more key players missing on the Dallas side, is I think that this could be a big week for Dalton Schultz. So
I could see that. Yeah, I could absolutely see that.
All right, let's go ahead and move on here. We got the Buffalo Bills and the New Orleans Saints as the wrap up for Thanksgiving weekend. The Saints are underdogs, so the Bills are favored by 6.5 points. The over under is 45. And Tyler, I'm going to kick this one to you to start it off.
I haven't seen anything from Buffalo the last couple of weeks that tells me that they should be an almost 7-point favorite over anyone. I think that they've played against worse defenses than the Saints have over the past couple of weeks and continue to come up short. The offense just looks out of sync, and I really can't tell you what it is. I think that potentially they've been trying to get a more balanced offense, run the ball, get Zach Moss and Singletary involved, and they just haven't been very efficient runners. I feel like if there was a get right game for them, this might be it, only because the Saints are so good against the run that Josh Allen's going to have to drop back and pass. And when Josh Allen throws the ball 30, 40 times and takes off 5 or 6 times rushing, that's when you see this Buffalo team at their best. Honestly, most of the time when they abandon the run, they tend to play better football. With that being said, until I see that offense click, I'm gonna take the Saints because the spread is so high. If you were telling me it was 3.5, I could take Buffalo to figure it out. But at that many points, I don't know. I, at the same time, am probably going to end up taking the under now with the Alvin Kamara news. It looks like Mark Ingram is just, they want to hand the ball off to him. They want him to be a workhorse. They want to, take advantage of having him back. And I agree. He looks great. He didn't look right with Houston. And now all of a sudden he's back in a Saints uniform and he looks good. I could see this being, honestly, a game of two teams potentially trying to run the ball. I hope Buffalo doesn't. I think this game is going to be a lot more exciting if Buffalo just comes out and says, you're good at stopping the run. We don't have a very good run game. We're just going to throw the heck out of the ball. But I'm afraid it doesn't happen. So I think I'm also going to take the under.
Gotcha. I think that I'm actually going to take the polar opposite of you on this one.
Okay.
I think that this is the get right game for Buffalo, specifically because I also don't think that the Saints have been playing very well. I think that backup quarterback play has caught up to this team. Alvin Kamara pretty much is the offense, and he's not in there. And the Saints defense, although they are like that's what they're known for, I don't think that they've even been holding up their end of the bargain necessarily. The
Yeah,
Bills kind of you could say the same thing, but because I do think that now that it's a even more cloudy backfield in Buffalo with Breida getting involved, I wouldn't touch that backfield at all in fantasy. I
yeah.
do think that Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, even Emmanuel Sanders, even though he's been disappointing you recently, is going to come back to life here in this one. I don't necessarily want to take the over, but just because I see it being more of a high scoring affair than even the Dallas Raiders game, and this has a lower over under, I'm going to go ahead and take the over, and I'm going to take this public favorite in the Bills.
Okay, I like
So
to see
we're,
it.
yeah. All right. So now let's jump over into the Sunday games. We have the Texans and the Jets. The Texans are actually favored in a game here, by 2.5 points. The over under is
Mm.
44.5. On this one, I am actually going to take the Texans here as a favorite. I am not a giant fan of what is going on with the Jets. I really have, even at the start of this season, thought that the Texans play a lot better with Tyrod Taylor under center. I think that this is a moment for them to kind of establish that they're not the worst team in the NFL. They're right in that mix, of course. We've already talked about some of those teams, and they're playing against some of those teams. So, you know, it's just one of those games where I feel like Tyrod Taylor gets it done. I don't necessarily like the over under on this one, so I'm going to take the under here. I don't think it's high scoring, even though I could definitely see maybe turnovers getting involved and that being the reason why this gets an over because of short field positions or something like that. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on this as well.
Yeah, I think this is the Texans team that we saw week one, right? Remember, they came out and we said, oh, wow, they're not as bad as we thought they were going to be. And a large part of that is Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor has always been, when healthy, an efficient quarterback. He's actually had a couple games this year when he's turned the ball over pretty uncharacteristically, but it feels like he's starting to get his bearings back. He's come back from injury and he's finally starting to feel comfortable in his role as a starting quarterback in the NFL again. And I think that, you're right. A game with the Jets is very, very prescriptive for, getting everything right and getting success going. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take Houston, but I actually am going to take the over. And the reason is I've seen Elijah Moore kind of come on in the fourth quarter of almost every game. He finds a way to get into the end zone. He finds a way to catch that bomb. This feels like a game where Houston, while they could run the ball, I think that they're going to, try to drop back, have a little bit of fun. I love Brandon Cooks in this game. I'm not excited to play any of the running backs on the Houston side because I just don't know what the backfield's going to look like yet. I think that, them cutting Philip Lindsay was wild. Obviously, now the whole backfield's just a little bit murky. I think you could, if you needed to flex any of the backfield pieces, you could. But if you have the ability to sit back and wait one more week and figure out who's going to get the work, I think I would prefer that. But I will take the over under. I will be playing Brandon Cooks in DFS everywhere I can if he's not super overpriced. I haven't had a chance to look at the pricing list. I like him a lot. And then on the other side of the ball, like I said, I think Elijah Moore is probably the guy that I'm looking to start. I think you could take a shot on Ty Johnson if you needed to. But we'll see. I think this is going to be one of those games where for most people, if you've got your morning slate on, it probably doesn't make its way onto your TV.
Yeah, and the names that you mentioned are literally the only ones I would consider for fantasy purposes as well. So let's go ahead and move on. Up next, we got the Patriots and the Titans. That is an interesting game where the Patriots are favored by a touchdown. The over-under is 44. On this one, I want to hear your take first. What do you think is happening, Patriots Titans?
7 is right where I stop feeling comfortable. I think that if this game was 6.5, I would be saying, okay, I'll take New England. But the thing is, 7's just one of those weird lines where the added factor that if I hit exactly on 7, I'm not even going to get to make money on that game. It kind of turns me off. I honestly think, you watch this line and I think come kickoff, if it's sitting at 6.5, I'm taking New England. If it's sitting at 7.5, I'm taking Tennessee. I think Tennessee is a good football team. I think that, we have a little bit of recency bias. they've struggled a little bit and they haven't looked, perfectly in sync. Obviously, we thought that this was going to happen sooner, right? We thought with Derrick Henry going out, immediately they were going to fall apart. Vegas made a lot of money on people betting against Tennessee the week after Derrick Henry got hurt. And all of a sudden, they came out and looked fantastic. I think it's starting to catch up with them. They've got a lot of people playing a lot of snaps and getting a lot more involved in the offense that didn't used to, because it felt like it. I mean, obviously, it's an exaggeration, but it felt like 90% of Tennessee's plays were just hand the ball to Derrick Henry. And now that guy's gone, a lot of people are getting a lot more touches. They're a little more banged up, a little more exhausted. But yeah, this is a tough one. I am going to take the under. I don't think either one of these offenses are ultra explosive. Even when you watch New England, they get it done, but they always get it done a little bit sloppy. It's always just a little bit, sloppy is the wrong word, a little bit gritty, right? It's always a little gritty. It's never ultra pretty. I know Mac Jones is coming off a good game, but this feels like one of those games where I think Stevenson and Harris are going to get a lot of play. Tennessee's got a good run defense, but I think they're going to get the touches to be okay fantasy plays. On the Tennessee side of the ball, they cut Adrian Peterson. I don't understand exactly what they're doing. Adrian didn't look great. He didn't look awful. And I think they need as many guys in that backfield as they can to try to take over for what they lost with Derrick Henry. But we'll see what happens. I am interested to see what you have to say on it.
Yeah, personally, I am actually leaning on taking the hot hand and going with the Patriots. This team is just, in my opinion, the surprise of the league. I did not peg the Patriots to be anywhere close to this good. And they are absolutely by far and away way better than I pegged them at the start of the year. Mac Jones is doing exactly what he needs to and nothing more, but it's working. And it's working to the point where, again, the Patriots are historically that type of team that is okay with just, oh, you're going to let us win. We're going to run up the score. So that's the thing that says, okay, the Titans, yes, they're on pace to have a winning season, make the playoffs, things along those lines. But because they are banged up, they are dropping games that they shouldn't, like they just did to the Texans with Julio Jones out, with Derrick Henry out, with A.J. Brown banged up, kind of questionable. I'm just going to keep riding the hot hand with the Patriots here. So I'm going to take the +7. I'm not excited about it. Or the -7, excuse me. I'm not excited about it, though, because you're right. I do think that is like the questionable line. However, I'm noticing that 6 and 6.5 are becoming key numbers as well. So as long as we're in that ballpark, it's really just, do I think that the Patriots are going to take it or not? And I'm leaning towards the Patriots taking it. On the over-under, because of that same theory, and with the Patriots being able to just run up the score on people and having that mentality, I'm going to take the over at 44 because I've seen them now carry those type of lines multiple times. So I don't really have a lot of faith in the Titans defense. So that's where I'm sitting on that game. Did I catch your over under on that?
Yeah. So like I said, if it that's the thing. Yeah, I guess if it stays at 7, if it stays at 7, man, I'm gonna take Tennessee. This feels like one of those games that you have a team that's coming off a bad loss. You have a team that looks hot as hell. This just feels like a trap game. I'm gonna take Tennessee.
And at 44, are you over or under?
I'm under.
Under. Okay, so we're opposites on that one. All right, so up next, we're going to go with the Bengals and Steelers game. The Bengals are favored by 4.5 points. The over-under is 44.5. On this one, Tyler, I'm going to kick it to you. What do you think is happening? Bengals, Steelers.
Yeah, this is a tough game. I think that 4.5 with a team that is as I struggle to give 4.5 points to anyone playing Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh can come out and look fantastic at any time. Ben is not by any means what he was before, but he's not making a lot of unforced errors. He found his safety blanket in Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson. He just seems to be able to keep this offense on the field. They'd be able to score points against teams that I usually don't think that they would. I know that Cincy took this game earlier in the year and they did it in Pittsburgh and nobody expected them to do so. That was kind of the game where we started looking at Cincy as, this team that maybe is going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. But I don't think the Steelers are ready to let little brother come in and take both games in the series. So I'm going to take Pittsburgh to cover the 4.5. I actually think Pittsburgh has a good shot to win this game, but for them to do that, they're going to have to play really good defense. The Bengals have, found a formula with Jamar Chase. It feels like he gets in the end zone every single week. Joe Mixon's been playing good, and I think if Pittsburgh is going to have a shot to win this game, they're going to have to limit the big plays. So I see this being an under game. I'm going to take Pittsburgh to cover the 4.5, and I'm probably going to regret it, but I don't think the Steelers are ready for the Bengals to be proclaiming before Ben retires that they run the division.
Yeah, I'm actually with you on that boat. I definitely think that the Steelers in this divisional rivalry, where historically they just have the Bengals number, getting 4.5 points, even though they're the away team, it's that divisional rivalry game where I think that it could easily go either way. And I'm just going to take the points in that scenario. When it comes to the over-under, 44.5, kind of a low one. I think I'm going to go ahead and take the over there. I just want this. For me personally, looking at fantasy, things along those lines, I don't have a lot of stake in either of these teams fantasy-wise, but I kind of wish I did, specifically with Najee Harris and Jamar Chase. Those are obviously the two guys that you would want in this matchup. T. Higgins hasn't really been doing anything. He's just been kind of an okay guy. Deontay Johnson obviously has been making your lineup each and every week. So, but outside of those kind of three names there, not a whole lot that I'm too interested in fantasy wise.
Are you playing either of the quarterbacks?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, Joe Burrow, if I had to, just because I think that he has Jamar Chase who can take a screen pass 75, 85 yards. He hasn't been doing it recently, but there is that potential there. I don't necessarily see that happening with any of the Steelers players, and I don't see Big Ben being able to push the field in the way that he used to. So I think that if he starts to do that in fact, those will start turning into interceptions, if anything. So Big Ben makes me nervous. I don't think I've streamed him even once this year. So
I would take, if you wanted to do it, I'd take a Big Ben Joe Burrow water bet fantasy points.
Fantasy points? I'll do it. I'll take Joe Burrow to get more fantasy points than Big Ben, even though I think that the Steelers are going to win. I'm with you. That would be my money line bet for sure. I would bet the Steelers money line.
That or the next one.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go on to that next one. Colts Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are favored on the road by 3 points. Over under is 53. I am 100%, like you kind of just hinted at a second ago. I'm on the Colts. I would be on the Colts money line. Over under wise, could it go over? Yeah. 53 is high. I'm going to just take it. Why not? I think that both offenses are rolling, but the Buccaneers struggle away. I think that they're undefeated at home and they struggle on the road. And the Colts, Jonathan Taylor, that dude's just figured it out. And I don't care that the Bucs have a good run defense. I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to still have his way, as the great ones do. So Michael Pittman, I think that he's going to have a decent game. I don't think that he's going to struggle at all with that Buccaneers banged up secondary. I think that the Bucs are honestly going to eat pretty well. Chris Godwin's, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Tom Brady, maybe AB. So I think it's going to be a fun game for sure. But I definitely think that this is the Colts are rounding into who we thought they were going to be at the start of the season, and they just weren't. And they've figured it out, and they're rolling.
Yeah, I actually love the Carson Wentz stream this week. I think if you needed to stream a quarterback this week, I like Carson Wentz. I think if the Colts are smart, Jonathan Taylor is going to get his touches for certain. Jonathan Taylor is going to be very involved in this offense. But I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be really involved in the passing game, like we started to see in the last couple of weeks. I think the best thing you can do against a defense like this is try to get a little bit of play action, maybe even a throwback after the play action to Jonathan Taylor, some screens. I love Michael Pittman in DFS. I think Jonathan Taylor is starting to demand so much attention in this offense that anytime they play against a team without a true number one shadow cornerback, I think Michael Pittman's going to feast, because you let Jonathan Taylor rip off 5 to 10 yard runs 3 or 4 times in a row, and then all of a sudden Michael Pittman's wide open over the top. I like him a lot this week. I'd be slamming Colts money line on almost every ticket unless AB is back. If AB is back, I still like the Colts to cover 3, but I don't know I'd be taking them on money line. I am going to agree with you. I'm gonna take the over. I know it's funny. I've been taking a lot of unders today, and all of a sudden you give me the highest over under on the board, and I'm jumping on the over. But I just think the Bucs have so many weapons. I think that even if the Colts can get out to an early lead, Tom Brady's not going to let a team beat him by 20. He's just not going to do it. He's going to find a way to put up points. It feels like the only time the Bucs don't score, more than 30 points is if they're playing a crappy team or they're playing New Orleans. They always struggle against New Orleans, but if they're playing a good team, Tom Brady just marches down the field and puts up more points. It's incredible to see what he's doing at his age right now.
Yeah. And then another thing is T.Y. Hilton could be back, so that's going to give them, another weapon there.
Yeah.
So
be interesting to watch for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the Eagles-Giants game. The Eagles are favored by 3.5 points. The over-under is 45.5. Personally, I think that I am going to be taking the Giants getting 3.5 here. I do think that we've seen kind of the bottoming out of Daniel Jones, and I think that the Eagles are kind of at their high point. I think that if we looked at this line maybe 3 weeks ago, that this would have been complete opposite. The Giants would have been favored by 3.5, 4 points. And I've seen this line be higher than it is right now at 3.5. I've seen the Eagles favored by more. So I personally am just thinking that this is kind of the letdown game for the Eagles, a get right game for the Giants, the over under. I'm not too hot on either way. I'll go ahead and lean the under with 45.5. Saquon is an interesting play, but he's going to be in your lineup no matter what with him back and healthy, given the running back situations going on. I think that personally, I'm not hot on either of the receiving options with Kadarius Toney or Kenny Golladay, but I would play Toney over Golladay in a fantasy situation as a flex play. On the Eagles side, Smith, Hurts, Sanders are the 3 guys that I would be in consideration of. Tyler, what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I like your fantasy analysis. I agree with you there for sure. I think though in the game, I think I'm gonna actually kind of go polar opposite of you. I think the Eagles are firing on all cylinders. I think Jalen Hurts is playing like a man that knows if he doesn't get it done this year, the Eagles are going to have no problem trying to pursue a different quarterback next year. And I think Jalen Hurts is playing good football. I mean, I played against him in fantasy last week and watched him, get 3 rushing touchdowns. In some of those plays, it didn't look like he was going to be able to get it in, and he kind of just willed his way in. And the Giants on the other side, I think if I'm a Giants player that has a long-term deal and I don't think I can get traded, I'm kind of going, why do I want to win too many games? Truly. I'd love to have another shot at an early draft pick and maybe move on from Daniel Jones. I think the Giants are going to try to move on from Daniel Jones after this year. No, this just feels like the Giants are finally starting to realize that they may have assembled the right pieces, but they don't have the right face for their team. And, I was a big believer in Daniel Jones potentially getting it right this year, and I just don't see it happening. Saquon's back on the field, so obviously, if he takes an 80-yard touchdown to the house, maybe the Giants do get it done. But I find myself taking the Eagles to cover, and I see this game being an over game.
Did you see the little stat where Baker Mayfield and Saquon Barkley since the start of 2020 have the same rushing production?
No, but that adds up.
Yeah, injuries, man.
Injuries are wild.
Something else. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Dolphins, Panthers. The Panthers are favored by 2 points. Over under is 41.5. A low one here. Tyler, I'm curious on your take.
I like Miami. I really do. I feel like this Miami team has been, if you watch them play football, like they're not as ugly as they were at the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, they were kind of that team that you were going, wow, I expect you guys to be really, really good. Right? Everyone coming into this year thought, okay, this is the year that maybe Miami, makes a play and they're going to try to battle Buffalo for the division. And I think the problem with what we've seen from Miami this year is maybe just our expectations. Maybe this really is a 500 kind of team and they're going to be in every game and maybe have a chance to win it, maybe not, depending on how Tua plays. But I feel like Miami has not been one of those teams where I've watched and I'm just like, God, you're bad. Miami's actually they've looked decent, and a lot of it is getting Gesicki involved, getting Waddle involved, and I think Carolina is one of those teams that just it seems like they're kind of missing a step. With Cam back in the lineup, it feels like all of a sudden Carolina might be able to get it right. But I also think with Cam in the lineup, you tend to lose a little bit of that big playability, right? Cam's not the take the deep shot down the field guy anymore. He was a little bit in his rookie year. His rookie and his second year, he was kind of hitting those deep balls, trying to go deep. We were seeing him throw for 400 yards all the time. But it feels like that stint in New England maybe kind of, got him back to being that run the ball from the one type of guy and kind of just keep the ball close to the line of scrimmage. And when you're the Panthers, that's what you want, right? You want the ball close to the line of scrimmage. You want the ball in Christian McCaffrey's hands. The Panthers have a lot of weapons, but I think the Dolphins will be able to cover. And I think that this is going to be an over game now. I think 41.5 is just a little low. If we were talking about 47, 48, I would definitely be taking the under. I don't think it's going to be crazy 30 to 35 type of game, but I easily could see this one being, 25-20 or something like that.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on the over. I am actually going to take the Panthers here, not because I don't disagree with you in the Dolphins take. I just do think that the Panthers have some sort of new life with Cam Newton that they were lacking for a few weeks there as they were dropping their games after the hot start. And I think that CMC is just another week removed from that injury, so he's going to be firing on all cylinders. I don't think that the Dolphins defense is what we made them out to be in the offseason. I think that rebuild was interesting because I think that last year showed that they were kind of like a year ahead of schedule with getting 10 wins, with tossing back and forth between Fitzpatrick and Tua, and they didn't seem like they had all the answers, yet they were coming up on the right side of things. And so we projected them to be something that they weren't quite yet. I think that the coin flip type of effect was just falling in their favor, and then it hasn't this year. And I could see this being one of the games where it just doesn't this year. So with the Panthers, I definitely am not a giant fan of DJ Moore anymore. I do think that that's definitely a player that had it's kind of like that Mike Williams type. He burned bright at the start of the year and then has fallen off. And I don't see it coming back necessarily just because I don't see that ceiling with Cam at quarterback because he doesn't take risks like, those big play risks, like you said, anymore. And if he does, it doesn't go in his favor typically. So,
And DJ Moore, when he came out and had that really, kind of Corey Davis-esque start to his career, and it was really slow, and he was an early draft capital guy, and he didn't really live up to the standards that kind of the NFL had put on him coming out of college. Cam was his quarterback,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
DJ's been there while Cam was there, and there was never anything crazy there. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, if anything, it made Robbie Anderson not look as crappy, but it just makes the two of them kind of equals, which makes
Yeah,
me not excited about either one of them. So
agreed.
let's go ahead and move on. We up next have the Falcons Jaguars games, and the Falcons are favored by 2 points. The over under is 46. On this one, I would definitely be taking the under here. I am not a fan of either one of these offenses necessarily. And then on the Jaguar side of things, I think I'm going to take Jaguars in the points. I don't have a lot of faith in these Falcons. I don't know what it is about this season in general. It just doesn't click for them. And the Jags defense tends to help keep them in games. I am sad about Agnew's injury, him being out for the rest of the year. I saw him as a spark on special teams, and then they got him involved in the offense. And I thought that that guy was going to kind of blossom into something special that they didn't have at the start of the year, even though we all thought coming into that year that with Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, and DJ Chark, that they were going to have some trio that were all getting drafted relatively okay in draft season, and then none of them lived up to expectation in any way, shape, or form. But just this Falcons team, there's something about them that I don't trust, I don't like, and I can't see myself taking them as a favorite in any situation. But I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I have it the same way. I have the Jacksonville Jaguars to go ahead and cover the spread. I actually wouldn't mind if you wanted to play them in a money line parlay. I wouldn't dislike it. I think it's going to be an under game, like you said. I think if you wanted to play, a little sneaky shot on the Jacksonville side, I think Marvin Jones is, somebody that now that you don't have Agnew, like you said, I think, he could potentially feast. I'm wondering honestly if Visca's going to get his roll back. And now that Trevor's kind of hit his stride and actually looks like he's getting his bearings under him compared to early in the year when he really hadn't yet. I'm wondering if we won't see potentially a Laviska Shenault second half of the year breakout. I don't know. It could happen. I think if you have an open spot on your bench and you really don't have anyone to pick up and he's sitting there, it might be worth picking him up and just watching this week and just seeing what his role in the offense looks like now that Agnew's gone. We'll see what happens on the Falcons side of the ball. I'm playing Pitts. I think you have to where you drafted him. And if Cordell is back, he's sliding right back into my lineup. I think if you wanted to stream, I don't know how I feel about streaming Trevor Lawrence this week. If you had to, I think I'd prefer him over Matt Ryan, as sad as that is. But Matt Ryan doesn't have anyone to catch the ball, and it's taken a toll on him. To go from having Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley to having neither of them, you can just kind of see it. It feels like Matt Ryan's spirit's just broken.
Yeah, absolutely. I see it the same way. I personally would probably avoid either quarterback if I had the option. And
Yeah,
the only other guy that we didn't mention who's in the same boat as Patterson is James
James
Robinson.
Robinson.
If he's healthy, he's going in.
Yep.
So, all right, let's go ahead and move on. Up next, we got the Broncos Chargers game. The Chargers are favored by 2.5 points. The over under here, 48.5. On this one, I'm going to toss it to you, Tyler. What do you think is happening? Broncos Chargers.
I'm gonna take Chargers to go ahead and cover in the light of Matt not being here. Just give him a little shout out. His Chargers have just, they came out and I thought, okay, they're gonna start to put it together. Justin Herbert going into his second year. Mike Williams was absolutely on fire, like you mentioned earlier. I go, okay, Matt will tell you if you ask me the year that Mike Williams came out, I said, I think this is the best college receiver that I've seen since Julio Jones, AJ Green-esque players. I said, you guys got a good one. And it just is taking him a while. And finally now, and we saw it last week, we saw a flash. Mike Williams got that deep touchdown to end the week. And I really, really like the Chargers roster. And I think for me, the selling point that's going to make me take them in this game, even though, it's in Denver, and that's always a tough place to play, especially this time of year. I think the thing is watching them find a way to win that game last week, watching them not be the Chargers of old that just always find a way to not get it done. It seems like this year they're actually kind of falling and into the end zone at the end of the game and winning the games that they're supposed to win. And so I'm going to take them. I will take the under. I think 48's a lot. I just don't see Denver as this explosive offense. It feels like, everything runs through the ground game. Between Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, they are most comfortable when the ball is in their hands. The Chargers aren't that great against the run, so I think they'll be able to be successful with it, and they'll be able to keep doing it. And on the other side of the ball, like I said, Mike Williams just hasn't been that crazy deep shot guy as of late, other than the big play last week. And if he doesn't find a way to get an 80-yard touchdown or something like that, I just don't see this Chargers team as somebody that can carry an almost 50-point over.
Yeah, I'm with you on the under. I am actually going to take the Broncos here. I see
Okay.
this kind of like the same points that you were making. Chargers not necessarily great against the run. That's exactly what the Broncos want to do is run the ball. They are at home. It's a tougher place for the Chargers to play. I see it almost lining up like the Broncos Dallas game. Obviously, I don't think that the Chargers are going to get blown out in the same way, but I just see that as a game where the Broncos just come up and show up way more than we thought that they would. And I think that we're a little bit more high on the Chargers than we should be considering what they've done the rest of this season, especially as of late. They haven't been that consistent team. Yes, they did show up last week, but I think that they aren't as consistent as I personally was expecting them to be. Of course, I was the Mike Williams owner and I rode that high at the start of the year, and then I rode that low for the rest of the rest of the season besides last week. I don't see, Austin Eckler getting 4 touchdowns this week by any means against the Denver defense. Keenan Allen, of course, is obviously a great play. So is Justin Herbert on the other side. Teddy Bridgewater is an okay streamer for me, but I wouldn't. But like you said, the running backs there are going to have their day. Jerry Jeudy is the wide receiver that I would want out of that grouping. I don't necessarily see Cortland Sutton getting a lot of production or Tim Patrick getting a lot of production. If anything, I would say maybe Noah Fant is the other guy that I would want starting in that lineup. But yeah, I mean, you and I see the game very similarly. I just think that the Broncos are going to be the one that comes out on top there.
Would you rather start Trevor against Atlanta, or would you stream Teddy against Chargers?
I would say Trevor only because Teddy Bridgewater has come out specifically and said that he wants to get the ball to running backs near the near the end zone. So Teddy Bridgewater is kind of fades himself when it comes to those, touchdown upside potential. So I would take Trevor in that situation. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Up next, we have the Packers-Rams game, and the Rams are favored by a point on the road, and the over-under is 47. Definitely curious what you have to say on that one.
I was live when the 49ers stunned the world, and Odell's, big first start kind of floundered a little bit, right? Obviously, we didn't expect him to be too involved in the offense, so I don't think it was a big surprise to those of us that, kind of understand in a playbook, especially a playbook as complicated as Sean McVay's, that you're not going to come out and just light the world on fire week one. But that being said, they're coming off a bye. They do have Odell, who should be integrated in the offense. Obviously, Cooper Kupp is an absolute monster. I think Darrell Henderson's potentially been, disappointing fantasy owners a little bit, mostly because he always finds a way to sit out 1 or 2 quarters. But I think that the trip to Lambeau, no matter how fresh they are, might just be too much. I honestly don't think that the Rams should be favored in this game. I know, most betting lines say you usually get 3 points for being at home. That's typically what the number is, especially when you're someone like Green Bay playing in Lambeau in a big environment that it's tough for people to play at. So if you're telling me Vegas thinks this should be, really a 4-point game at a neutral site, I just don't buy it. Not the way the Rams have been playing, and inversely on the way that the Packers have been playing. The Packers have been playing out of their mind. They've been playing really, really good football. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has finally stepped up as the number 2 in recent weeks. And I think he's going to be able to do it again. I think if you were going to take a shot on somebody, Marquez is that guy, just because, at the end of the day, even if Jalen Ramsey isn't on Adams all the time, on the plays where he is, Aaron Rodgers is a smart enough quarterback. If you've got someone on a lesser corner, he's going to take advantage of it. So I will take Green Bay at -1. I'll take Green Bay on the money line, honestly, at that point, give my parlay a little extra juice. And I will take the over. I think that these are 2 explosive offenses. Obviously, they've got good defenses, both of them, and maybe it's not the shootout we expect it to be. But when you've got 2 teams that can score on any play from any part of the field, I think it's hard not to take an over that's under 50.
Yeah, completely agree with you on the over-under. Completely agree with you on the side. I'm going to take the Packers as well in this one. I agree. I don't think that the Rams have been playing up to their potential. The Packers, I think, have been doing a little bit more than their potential, but I think that continues to ride. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is slowing down because of some COVID toe or whatever he's got going on. And I don't necessarily see that the Rams being some consistent powerhouse. And they have been kind of faltering in the past few weeks. And I just don't see that trend flipping against the Packers. The Packers are just that team this year that find a way to win. They got embarrassed week 1 and they said, not again. So I just see them kind of rolling.
And if this wasn't Lambeau, we'd be having a different conversation, truly, because I think Odell being integrated into that offense with a full bye week, that team having time to get healthy, I think it's going to be a really competitive game. I think the Rams are going to look good. I don't by any means think the Packers, should be sitting here favored by 3.5 or 4 points. I think it's going to be competitive, but I think being in Lambeau is the big difference maker for me.
Yeah, and I agree. And to your point, I mean, yeah, the old gambling way of thinking was a home gets 3 points. I think that power rankers have adjusted that to more like anywhere between honestly as little as a half point to like a point and a half. But Lambeau is that true home field advantage in my opinion as well. So
especially as it starts to get cold.
yeah. And Rams playing in a dome, warm weather city, they're not that team. Granted, they have Matt Stafford who's been stuck in Detroit forever, so I mean that makes a difference.
And Odell that's been stuck in Cleveland.
Yeah. But
so
yeah,
I think it's gonna be a good game.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good game, that's for sure. We just like the Packers in that one at Lambeau. Yep. So let's go ahead and move on. We got the Vikings 49ers. The 49ers are favored by 3 with the over under 49. Personally, I'm going to go ahead and take the Vikings on that one, getting 3 points. I think that this is definitely a close game. I think that that's pretty much how every single Vikings game goes. I think that both of these teams are kind of hitting their stride. The Vikings are starting to get those coin flip games under their belt. The 49ers are just showing up more and more as a team in general. This has kind of been billed as a playoff week this early because both of these teams are going to be vying for that 6 or 7 spot in the NFC. One way or another, I think that we're going to see one or both of these teams at the end of the year. It just really kind of depends on how this end of the year season plays out, but it kind of feels like that early postseason, like one of us is getting in and the winner of this is going to have a lot of implications. And I don't necessarily know that I don't necessarily feel comfortable putting the Vikings on a money line, but getting 3 points is what makes me take the Vikings side on this. The over-under 49, that's high in my opinion for this matchup. So I'm going to take the under here. Definitely love a lot of options here, including Deebo Samuel, including Brandon Ayuk, including Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. But I am curious on your take. And Dalvin Cook, of course. I'm curious on your take on specifically what's happening in the running back room on the 49ers, but then your take in general on this game.
I wish I could tell you what was going on with the running back room of the 49ers. I think at this point, honestly, and I can't believe I'm saying these words, I think it's so complicated that I'm not playing any of them right now. I think I'm waiting and I'm seeing what goes on. I'm thinking, by the end of the year, Elijah's, back there and, hopefully completely healthy and he's, back to getting the carries like he was a little bit earlier in the season. But right now, like I mentioned earlier, I watched that 49ers Rams game and I had always been somebody that I was not a big fan of 49ers receivers. As early as Deebo and Ayuk were going, I was not touching them. And they really weren't going that early, but I wasn't touching them. And getting to watch Deebo Samuel play football, he's arguably one of the most explosive players I have ever seen live. I think the 49ers are best when they bring him into the backfield and let him play running back, as crazy as that sounds. And with that being said, it's going to make me do something that I would not have done earlier this year. And it's going to make me take the over in this game. I'm going to agree with you. While everything tells me I want to play the 49ers won their first home game when I was there. They had not won a home game since like midway point of last year. It was crazy. They have not been playing very, very good at home. I think this is going to be a tight matchup, one with a lot of points scored. It's going to go back and forth. So I'm going to take Minnesota just because they're getting the points. Honestly, if the 49ers are getting 3, I'd probably take the 49ers. It's just, I think it's going to be a competitive game. And I think that we had a misunderstanding about these two teams. We did. We thought the 49ers were a run-heavy offense like they always are. We thought the Minnesota Vikings were going to go through Dalvin Cook like they always do. And when you look at these two teams, really, they don't. They go through Deebo Samuel and Justin Jefferson. It's crazy to say because I never thought I'd say Kyle Shanahan's offense goes through a receiver. I never thought I'd say that Dalvin Cook was not the make or break piece to whether or not the Vikings win a football game. But truly, it's been coming down to Justin Jefferson and Deebo Samuel. I think the quarterbacks are both playing just good enough to get those guys the ball and let them do the rest. And I think it's going to be an exciting one, Mike. I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I had to pick a streamer this week, it would be coming from Kirk Cousins, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
This is the streamer game for me because I'm okay with either Jimmy Garoppolo or Kirk Cousins, but I would pick Kirk Cousins in this one in terms of a streaming quarterback.
And yet you're taking the under.
I'm taking the under.
But you like both quarterbacks.
It's just a high over under for these two teams where I think that either one of them could not show up. As weird as that sounds, I think that they are both playing really good football. I think that either one of these teams could have a game. Like, think back to the 49ers Cardinals game really early on in this season. It was so defensive heavy and so much of an under that it kind of shocked me a little bit. I don't see this game being that way at all.
I was at that game too. I've been going to all the games this year. It feels like, but I was at that game too. And here's the thing: the Cardinals are just good, Mike. I know they're good. I'm not a big Cardinals fan. I know you like the Cardinals, but I'm going to say it from an outside point of view. That defense is even. It feels like, dude. It feels like they lost J.J. Watt and did not skip a beat. It is absolutely crazy.
Oh, not at all. That team has my heart.
All right, let's move on. We talk about these damn teams too much.
All right, let's go ahead. Ravens, Browns. The Ravens are favored by 4. The over-under is 46. Baker Mayfield held together by duct tape at this point. Lamar Jackson hopefully gets over the runs by Sunday Night Football. I am going to take the Ravens -4. Not happy about it just because it is that division rivalry so that it could go back and forth. But just the way that these two teams are showing up with their starting quarterbacks, I just think that the Ravens are the side here. Over under 46. Again, not that it's as high, but I'm just leaning an under on this one. Fantasy wise, Nick Chubb is of course the play. Not excited necessarily about any of the receivers, but Jarvis Landry would be the play in my opinion. And then on the Ravens side, if Hollywood is healthy, then he's the play. What do you think about the Ravens backfield though?
I think Latavius Murray looked absolutely horrible last week. I think that they want him to be their running back. I do. I really think that if both guys are healthy, I don't think it's any question that Latavius Murray is the best running back that they have on their roster outside of obviously Dobbins, who's very hurt. But I just don't think he's ready yet. I think they prematurely cut Lev Bell, and I think that Latavius Murray probably should have taken another week, and he came back. If Latavius Murray comes out and looks healthy, I think it's his job to take back, absolutely. But until he looks healthy, I think it's Devonta Freeman's job.
Would you play either of them?
I think I would play Devonta Freeman. I think I would play Devonta Freeman if I needed to. I don't think that people who have Devonta Freeman are. I don't think they're facing a whole bunch of running back options to just kind of take their folly at. I think a lot of them have him, need him, and I think you can play him. But I think that long-term value, I would be cautious. And if I owned Devonta Freeman, I would probably also want to own Latavius Murray, just because at the end of the day, if you have one of these guys, whoever the guy who's getting all the carries in Baltimore usually always has value. I know it hasn't been true all year, but it feels like Devonta Freeman kind of has that hot hand right now. So I am going to agree with you. By the way, while I'm going at it, I like all your points on the Brown side. Jarvis maybe, Chubb obviously, potentially Dearness Johnson. I don't think so. I don't think his snap counts have been where they need to be. But I will take Baltimore to cover 4, and I will take the under.
All right, then let's move on to Monday Night Football, where we have Washington football team taking on the Seattle Seahawks, and the football team is favored by 1.5 at home. The over/under is 47. Tyler, you look very confused, so let's hear your take.
It's not that I'm confused. It's that it's just crazy how we've gone so full circle from Washington at the beginning of the season being the favorite a lot because we expected them to be this, fantastic team, to all of a sudden, they're just absolute garbage. They're the, worst defense in the NFL and all of this, and they have Taylor Heineke, and now all of a sudden we're all the way full circle back to they're better than Seattle. And don't get me wrong, Seattle is not been playing well. Alex Collins is not the answer at running back. They are clearly missing Chris Carson. Their offensive line looks like Swiss cheese. Russ is still getting his bearings. But I think that's the thing. I think Russ is starting to get his bearings. I think he's starting to look better. I think we saw it last week. He at least was able to get the ball into, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf's hands. They want to run the ball, but I think that personally, they'll be able to take advantage of this Washington football team secondary and at least get the ball in the hands of their playmakers and let them do the rest. Obviously, we're looking at a Washington football team that still on paper is pretty good and, should be able to get some pressure on Russ. Russ has dealt with pressure his entire career, and he's always kind of figured out a way to get through it. I think now he's had, 2 games back. He's coming for his 3rd one. Seattle's kind of at this make or break point where it's like, if they're going to try to make the playoffs, they need to do it now. I think Russ knows what this game means because I think if they drop this game, they're done. I think their season's over if they drop this game. I think Russ is a veteran and he knows that. I think Seattle's going to get it done. I'll take them to cover. And as far as the over/under goes, I think I'm going to probably take – I'm going to take the over. I'm going to get crazy. Reason being, I think that Seattle, if Seattle's going to get this done, I think Seattle's going to do it through DK and Lockett. And I think if Washington is going to get this done, I think it's going to come in the screen game with Gibson, and it's going to come with Terry down the field. I think both of these teams realize that their running games are not what they wanted them to be this year, and both teams need to win this game. I like that. I like the idea that both these teams are going to try to drop back and pass the ball. What do you think, though?
I'm honestly going to take the opposite approach here. I think that this is just not the year for the Seattle Seahawks. I think that they do drop this game. I think that this is the official breaking point for Pete Carroll on the hot seat 100%. Even though I don't think that they'll fire him, I think that they'll, have those closed door behind the scenes conversations and like, Pete, you need to retire, dude. I think this is the breaking point game. Russell Wilson, last week, he dropped his 3rd straight for the first time in his career. I think he makes it a 4th. I know that he is definitely that guy who can will the team. I just don't know if he came back too fast, and I don't think that the ball is going the way he wants it to. So I think that some of his balls are fluttering a little bit when he's normally a very crisp passer. I think some of them are falling short when they're normally right on target. So I definitely think that I can, I don't see it as the outside of the realm of possibilities at all that you're 100% right on this game and I'm 100% wrong. But that's just kind of my gut feeling telling me that something's not right with the Seattle team. And I think it goes back to what we saw this last offseason where Russ really did want out, yep. and they kept him. And I just don't think that the cohesion there is what they have, tried to make the front of. And it's showing on the field at this point with Russell being injured. It's kind of like the bandage was starting to peel a little bit. And I just see that kind of happening this week as, okay, Seahawks, it's been a good run. We're not going to see the same version of the Seahawks come next year. And on the flip side, I also am kind of channeling, again, like you referenced before, Matt Shetler energy with his faith in Taylor Heineke. I think that he had more than any of us faith in his ability as a quarterback, and I think that he's kind of started to figure it out a little bit more, piece it together. And I think that Scary Terry is a great option this week because I don't have much faith in the Seattle defense. I think that Antonio Gibson is kind of hitting a stride there, that he obviously hadn't been through much of this season. So I do think that it's going to be a decent game, but I'm taking the opposite takes of you. I'm taking the under, and I am taking Washington to cover that 1.5.
It'll be an interesting one, and not one I feel super in love with. So I definitely agree with you. It could go that way, but I don't know. My gut tells me Russ is a fighter. We'll see what happens though. It'll be a fun one to watch, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to close this episode out here, instead of doing, our best five that we kind of both agreed on, I'm curious for you, what is a game or a few games or a few bets, one, two, or three, that you feel the most conviction on?
I think it's funny, but I think it's a lot of the ones that we disagreed on. I think I'm going to take. Well, first I'll take one that we agree on. I like the Colts to win the game. I do like Tennessee to go ahead and keep the game tight enough that the game goes under. And I think I'm going to probably take. My third game would actually probably be Jacksonville. I really dislike Atlanta right now and the way that they're playing football.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the Colts 100%. That's one of the games that I have the most conviction on. I do have the most conviction on a game that we disagree on with the Broncos being able to keep that one close or win against the Chargers. Let's get an over/under in there. What's an over/under that you feel the most conviction on?
Over under that I feel the most conviction on. Let's say I like that. I like that Colts Bucks over. I like that Colts Bucks over. I do. I think it's crazy to go with the highest over under the week going over, but I like that one.
Let's do it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Limitless edition of the 2 Minute Drill podcast. You've been listening to Tyler Cordell and myself, Michael Homan. We thank you so much for listening this long. If you enjoyed this video, this podcast, share it with a friend. If you listened this long, I'm assuming you did. So go ahead and share this with someone else who likes NFL football. Make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Leave a review. It helps out a lot. And with that being said, hope you enjoy Thanksgiving with your fam. Hope you enjoy all the football, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Thanks, guys. Peace.